Alright, hi there, that's right, great and glorious, soon to be famous one day, Nick Dutch back on the camera again. I just want to do an informal video today because I could be doing an awful lot of work today, but right now, I just need a bit of time just to chill out. And so I thought I would give you a tour of the major arcana of the tarot, and this is from the book of Thoth tarot today, just going through it bit by bit. Now, what do I understand about tarot? Tarot is a card game, first and foremost, and it was medieval in origin. That's the way I understand it. The mythology of the tarot suggests that, the symbols were taken from the first temple in Jerusalem and put into a tool of gambling so that at a later time when spiritual development would again be needed, that the secrets and the wisdom of spiritual development could then be opened up thanks to the wisdom of that self-same spiritual development being held within the tarot. And there's been lots of people who've written all kinds of wonderful books about what the cards could mean, what the cards do mean, what some people think the cards mean, or correlating it with various different forms of mythology. And maybe that has helped, maybe it's elaborated upon the message of tarot, maybe it hasn't. I would say that those books probably have muddied the waters, so to speak, and to a certain degree. But on the other hand, tarot is still used by religious groups, secret societies, and all the rest of that as a way of explaining religious ideas. So let's go through them all one by one, starting from 0 and working its way on to 21. Card number 0. Hopefully you can see that. That's the Fool card of the tarot. Now this particular image, it's got a bit of a wide-eyed character in it. Very dreamy gaze, not really with the world. A sense of excitement to a certain degree. There's this weird shape between his legs that appears to be vaguely reminiscent of something of a phallic nature. So maybe that's talking about desire, or essentially talking about willpower, or something which either is or could be planted to basically yield rewards for later on. As is traditional with tarot, this character's got a wild creature of some description biting at his thigh, of which he is completely and utterly oblivious. So, often this is talking about foolhardiness to some people, but I regard this as a rather oblivious state when you don't know everything, a state of naivety, a sense of there are things around you which could be damaging you, but you're not necessarily aware of them. You are full of potential, you've got the ability to create a lot of different wonderful things in your future, but you yourself are not properly aware of them. Your gaze is turned away from both the hardships of the world and the useful things in the world. Also within this image we seem to have a dove-like creature in the top corner, which seems to be flying rings around and leaving a rainbow-like kind of like circle around the Fool character. And there's also a butterfly, which some people associate with the soul. So we've got images of peace, images of being rescued maybe from the floods, or a sense of this character actually needs to be saved from something, saved from himself, saved from something else about him. We've also got something a bit like the staff of Hermes, the staff of Mercury, flying around on the rainbow path around him, which seems to be talking about healing and the potential of wisdom. But this is not something he's grasping or holding on to. This is something which is there or around him in the universe, but this extra wisdom is rather elusive. So there's spiritual things there, there's salvation messages there, there's healing messages there, but he himself doesn't seem to be grasping it. He's just gazing forward, wide-eyed. Quite a fascinating character. There's lots of other symbols there which I'm not going to go into because I want to cover every single card in this video. Anyway, that's the Fool. Next, we got the Magician. Now, Lady Frida Harris painted 3 versions of the Magician card for Aleister Crowley. This is just one of them, and it's the one that I use when I'm doing my readings for a living. And I think that this is pretty descriptive. If you look, you can see that the character appears to be coming from a central point, almost as if he's exploding into the universe, upward and outward. There's again signs around him of the staff of Hermes, the serpents on the staff itself, but this time it's much closer to him. It's around his head. It's talking about his awareness of the ability to bring healing, bring wisdom, and a sense of maybe even of the potential to be a conqueror, because there's something reminiscent of a Roman military standard at the top there. So this is a character just one step on from what we had before, the Fool. And in this particular case, he's grown in awareness. He's at a new stage, and he's capable of putting something into effect. His arms, if you look at it, they're outstretched, and he's touching something that looks like either a bone or a staff with one hand. And there's it appears to be a flying egg over there as well. Again, another symbol of fertility, or a sense of there being a potential for further progress. So there's more things germinating, but it isn't just the sense of the phallic symbol. It's a question of a feminine symbol, namely an egg. And maybe that's the next stage on from planting the seed. So that's why I often see this sign as being like that moment when you just graduated from university, or you just left school and about to go out into the world armed with knowledge. You're prepared. You're not experienced, but you are prepared to be able to do something. And of course we've got other groovy symbols around here. I mean, the monster that's biting the Fool's leg has been turned into a chimp-like creature. A shadowy, vaguely humanoid character in roughly the same position on the card. But it's a higher level of animal, so maybe he's aware of a greater intelligence behind more malevolent forces, and he is more aware that there are risks out there, but he's not capable of reaching out and touching them. Alright? He's being protected to a certain degree, just like you are when you're a very young child, and then moved on to a next stage when he's actually capable of putting something into effect. The wings can be seen as being a symbol of communication, but they can also be seen as an opportunity to be able to move further forward. The Fool card, the character had no wings. There were wings on the staff that was flying around him, but he himself did not have them. But here, we've got this almost angelic image that the Magician card seems to have. Someone who's capable of doing things, either for himself or for somebody else. Now, this one is an intriguing one for me. I mean, all I'm doing is giving you my own interpretations based upon what I'm seeing here and a few of the other connections that I've picked up with the passage of time. Here we have the High Priestess, which is fascinating. And when I owned a pack called the Tarot of the Witches, the High Priestess was regarded as being representative of the High Priestess in a coven, was therefore a very powerful card and a very powerful symbol. I don't feel that the meanings of the tarot cards are necessarily that literal. So, the Magician does not mean to say you are a magician, okay? The Fool does not mean to say you are stupid. And the High Priestess is not talking about some bitch who runs a coven, okay? What it's talking about is something a little more complex than that. There's this crescent shape around her, okay? And that seems to have been expanded in a geometrical manner beneath, looking like a net. Maybe a web which is interconnecting things and interconnecting people. I often see this as being more about being bound to a society or a community. At her feet there's a camel, which is of course a creature which can do without water for a long period of time. So it's also talking about survival. So there's a feeling of togetherness, a sense of sensitivity, the crescent moon talking about perception, and also a question of doing without for a long period of time. And there's also some gemstones which look a bit like diamonds at the foot of the card there. Maybe suggesting wealth, maybe suggesting the ability to transform somehow, like a prism transforms light into its constituent parts. So, and also a prism can unite the colours into a singular brilliant white light beam as well, can't it? So it seems to have the power to be able to split people up and to unite people as well. So it could be descriptive of social dynamics in a community setting, which is interesting. So you got the journey from like this childhood-like state there to being ready to enter into the world here, being involved in societies and communities. Fascinating. Now we move on to the third card, the Empress. Another strong female character, the High Priestess regarded as strong. The Empress, one step beyond there. Obviously the word Empress deals with a more powerful character than just a religious leader. So this is the name of a political leader. And just to illustrate that further, instead of symbols just like gems and the camel we've had here in this feminine card, we've also got a shield, which would go well with the title, if you think about it, because an empress, unlike a high priestess, is not concerned with how pretty gems are, but is concerned with the defense of the realm. We have an interesting heraldic symbol of it looks like an eagle-like creature on the shield itself, which is done in white, which is very traditional with tarot. And again, we've got a crescent moon up there as well. The Empress, to me, definitely stands for a position of power and success to a certain degree. But because it's a feminine card, it's also talking about receptiveness, so taking knowledge, taking wisdom, taking perspective from other people. It is a Venusuvian card as well. So we're talking about the High Priestess, okay? There's more symbols in this card than you might think. She's holding a bunch of flowers, and the flowers are white. Now in the Golden Dawn Tarot, there's one of the court cards which is also carrying white flowers, and I associate that with the Angel of Death because it happens to have wings. There are 7 court cards in the Golden Dawn Tarot that have wings on the characters have wings on their backs, and that's because they're representative of the 7 planetary archangels of the Sun, the Moon, Mercury, Venus, Mars, Jupiter, and Saturn. The white flowers, talking about regret, therefore connected to Cassiel and the Angel of Death, but expressed in a very human way. So, rather intriguing. Well, every empress needs an emperor, and here is the emperor. One thing you'll notice, straight away, straight out, colours here very red, colours here very blue. Why is that? Well, typically in New Age symbology and occult symbology, you've got projective ideas or colours, and you've got receptive ideas and colours, projective being one aspect, namely what is commonly considered to be male. I regard it as the world of action rather than the world of contemplation. And of course the more gentle feminine colour, so to speak, to do with reception, being sensitive, maybe contemplation and thought. So essentially you've got thought there and you've got action there. So with everything, you've got to think first, then act. And that's basically part of the message there. Very similar in many ways. We've got a very similar emblem on the shield. Again, a shield that was talking about something military. Alright, a desire to protect, yes, or to guard. But also, you don't have weapons if you're a religious character. So is the Emperor necessarily a religious character? Not really. It's interesting that he's also got another animal at his bottom corner. Just like the Fool had, just like the Magician had, the Empress has got a swan, and the Emperor has got a lamb with a halo. And yes, there is often Christian symbolism coming out in tarot. You might think that tarot has got nothing at all to do with Christianity or the Christian religion, but a lot of the symbolism, including in the Golden Dawn, was based upon like the Book of Revelations. I mean, there's serious correlations there between the idea of the ceremonial magic circle and the idea of the 7 spirits, and then the 4 quarters and the rest of it. There's symbology of that within Revelations. Okay, and the circle itself represents the rainbow, which is like surrounding the whole thing. It's crazy. I think it was even Thunderfoot did a video about that, and I immediately saw the correlation there between Golden Dawn symbolism, ritual magic symbolism, and so I realized, as a result, funnily enough, of an atheist talking, that there was a correlation between Revelations and what was actually happening within the Golden Dawn. They were trying to say that we are the beginning of the next era. The old era has gone. We are the new religion. We are the new orthodoxy, which is a very clever political statement. Okay, what else? In his left hand he's holding a sphere, which is often associated with the planet Earth, the world, and control over the world. No human being has control over the entire world, so again that's allegorical. That's talking about reaching a stage whereby you have power to control. If this is talking about different stages of life, then the Empress itself, in this particular respect, is actually talking about a sense of regret for things lost. So the character is there, as the character is moving through the various different stages of the major arcana, is reaching a stage of growing up and maturity. It's not just a question of having left college, but also regretting your childhood maybe, and maybe that's one of the things she is regretting. But in this particular case, we don't have signs or symbols of regret. Instead, we've got symbols which are talking about action. He's holding a staff in his hand. It's not that bunch of white flowers, poor little white flowers. It's a staff with a ram's horn on it. Ram's head, ram's horns at the top there. You probably can't see it, but I'm telling you it's there. So when you get yourself a pack of the Book of Thoth Tarot, you can then see it yourself. So the energy here is very different. When I'm talking about the word energy, I'm just talking about the meanings, thoughts, feelings, and associations associated with that. Very much to do with forget the regret. Let's get on with making money, being prosperous, and getting on with life. But all of a sudden, we go back to religious symbols again. We had the high priestess, and now we're going on to the hierophant, which is the pope, basically, in some tarot packs. So why would you go from a matriarchal or matrifocal religious character in the earlier cards in the tarot, and then move on to a monotheistic or organized religious symbol later on in the major arcana? This isn't just talking about the progression of an individual through their life. This is talking about the progression of society through various different stages. And one of the stages is that of organized, centralized religion. So, you could see this as being the exodus out of, or going out of the Garden of Eden. You've got your childlike Adam and Eve-like state of, yeah, I mean, everything is fine and wonderful, everything's provided for us. You then get your biting of the apple. You've now got the wisdom, so you can now start putting things into effect, but you've got no idea what to do. And then you go through the matrifocal stages of early social development, so to speak, possibly even with female figures running the world or running the universe. And then all of a sudden you go on to these male characters and symbols of organized religion. So, is this just talking about the individual going through the proverbial fool's journey, or are we talking about the emergence of society and the way that society is moving? Now, we've got 4 different characters there around the outside of the card, being either the cherubim or the 4 apostles. Some would correlate that with the 4 elements if they were of the pagan Wiccan type orientation. But the one thing that's intriguing, and these symbols have a wide variety of different meanings depending upon what variety of cults or religiosity you're going by. You can see that just by my finger he's holding onto an object which actually looks an awful lot like a thing used to beat rugs. That is a domestic symbol, often associated with women and not with men. So, are we talking about a sense of the balance between the male and the female, between the sensitive and the aggressive? Monotheism may have, in accordance with some of the symbols in this card, conquered society. But on the other hand, there's still the sense of there being this latent sensitivity or feminine principle associated with what's going on here. So that's also rather interesting and intriguing. Lots of pentagram signs there, right in the middle of his chest, a smaller version of himself. So he as an individual is aware of what he was when he was a child, and the fact he's just a bigger version of that. So, if it was the story of an individual moving through various different stages of life, he's also aware that he's still basically human, and has some variety of restrictions, faults and foibles, and he's a product of his experiences. Alright? Now, this is where it gets really interesting and intriguing. The Lover's card. And it doesn't mean romantic love. If you think about what we've already seen, we've seen a combination between the story of Genesis, the evolution of society, and the evolution of the individual. So what on earth would the Lover's card mean? Would it be literally falling in love? Well, some people say that's another time of life. That's when you move away from your parents and you get married with somebody, you settle down and you yourself become the authoritative individual. So yeah, new beginnings of sorts. But here we had the symbol of organized religion being created, and now we got the symbols of courtly figures going through what could be described as being a marriage ceremony, being ruled over by a potentially religious individual, or possibly religious individual. Is that therefore the story of society taking, or society which has been created by religion, taking a much more powerful role in controlling the aspects of lives of individuals? It could be. Now, moving further forward, the chariot, 7th major arcana. If this is about the evolution of society and humanity spreading over the face of the planet, there will come a time of warfare when there's going to be a clash of civilizations or a clash of tribes. The chariot is a martial symbol. The character in it is wearing armor. He's carrying something which could either be a crystal ball or a shield. We're not quite sure. We just see it being round or with pretty colors. And there's the 4 creatures at the bottom, very similar to the 4 creatures we see here, top corners and bottom corners. The 4 creatures we see here, because the number 4 comes out rather a lot. And I didn't mention it before, but there's also 4 creatures here if you look very closely. There's 2 rams at the top. You got the Lamb of God I mentioned before, and you got the creature on the shield. So everything is surrounded by 4 of something. But here it's at the foot of the chariot and not around the chariot. And above his head, just to demonstrate a blend between the sensitive and the aggressive, there's the sign of Cancer, or a crab-like creature on top of his head. So he may be someone who goes out and attacks things, or in this society or culture may be something which goes out and attacks things. But there's also this sense of there being a desire for sensitivity to a certain degree. So, wow. I mean, that's it's pretty intense. The quality of different messages which are there. Okay. 8th tarot card, adjustment, balance, or justice. Whopping great symbol of scales. Alright, this is a character which could be female, but it is female. It's got a crescent sword. It's got a sword with 2 crescents on it, which is a symbol used in Wicca these days. The pans themselves, the scale pans, could also be seen as being crescents in their own right. So it's full of lunar symbols. The moon is talking about sensitivity, dreams, aspirations, dealing with stuff, dealing with problems. Trying to find out more about a situation and trying to find some resolution, not necessarily being able to get there, and probably making the wrong judgment on the way. But the sense of trying to get that feeling of justice sorted out is there in quite a big way. Not surrounded by creatures in this particular case. Just purely and simply a very singular message of trying to find out. Now, in this card, on this card it's called adjustment. It's not called justice. Which is different from other tarot packs for various reasons, which I think would be not too difficult for you to divine. Okay. 9th tarot card, the Hermit. I love this one. I seriously love this one. I mean, every single tarot pack you buy is a work of art in its own right. They've all got different meanings and associations, slightly different use of colours, textures. It's all there. And it's all got a slightly different feel to it. Now, with the Hermit card, you've got some very obvious pagan type symbols, because the Hermit is looking towards and trying to reach, so it seems, an egg which is surrounded by a serpent, a snake's egg. Snakes, again, to do with healing, to do with gaining knowledge and wisdom. And the snake symbols we saw in the Fool card, we saw it in the Magician card, it's coming out again in the Hermit card. It's like a repeated motif, rather like the artwork of Salvador Dali had certain repeated motifs in it. Okay, so this is relating back to the earlier stages that we saw in the Magician and the Fool card. Maybe it's talking about regaining a certain level of lost understanding and wisdom. The bottom corner has again got a wild creature which looks threatening. In this case, the 3-headed dog, just like the god which guards the dog which guards hell in Greek mythology. So there are threats there, threats abound, but why on earth would he be carrying a lantern, and why would the lantern be between his body and the thing which is threatening him? If he's afraid of the dark, he's trying to get rid of whatever it is that's dark. Some people say the lantern essentially talks about intelligence or wisdom or the growth of knowledge. If we're talking about the tarot as being talking about the growth of society, maybe this is the development of organized science. We've seen within the tarot there the potential message or possible message of the evolution of society as well as the individual, from maybe the primitive hunter-gatherer type or Garden of Eden state to a time of organized social structure and religion taking an impact upon society. So we got a sense of gaining knowledge, possibly gaining something which is lost, but also possibly dispelling darkness. Is this the birth of organized science? Possibly. I interpret the Hermit card often as being a sign of research and trying to find things out anyway, as well as being illuminated by intelligence, sometimes even arrogance. But it's still a level of progression on from what was there before, which I think is fascinating. Okay. The Wheel of Fortune. I don't feel I can really correlate this one tremendously with the evolutional development of a society. Apart from maybe reaching a time whereby people can actually focus on enjoying life rather than just toiling. So maybe the birth of recreation. The symbol is very simple. We got a bit of a complex, hectic background, but we've also got this wheel with many spokes. Again, we've also got creatures around the wheel. We've got stars above it. And I guess the sense there is that of things carrying on. I mean, the whole feeling of the card is bright. A sense of effort, but effort for effort's own sake. The wheel does not seem to be driving anything. It's not like driving stones to grind corn. It's just turning. And these creatures are racing around the wheel, maybe pulling it. We do have other things such as an ankh-like symbol. We've got a symbol of the Sphinx on the top of it, which could be regarded as being the wisdom of the complexity of life, because of the riddle of the Sphinx and knowing about your passage through life and being aware of that and trying to cope with that, as well as striving for a goal. So a combination between asking the whys about life as well as enjoying it. Okay, we have the 11th major arcana now, Lust. Just as I spoke before, I mean, some cards have a lot of red colours on them, talking about action. Some people interpret the Babylon or Whore of Babylon type imagery to be that of a state of joining in spiritual union, which is of course a possibility, but it's not hard and fast and certain. There's nothing which is totally cut in stone when it comes to tarot symbolism. This is a many-headed beast which the lady is riding upon. She's holding onto something on top which is looking a bit like a heart to a certain degree. I mean, it's red, it's vibrant, it could be a drop of molten metal, and it's got the whole drop-shaped thing has got a peacock's tail type pattern above it. The obvious sexual imagery is there. The woman is bare-breasted, she's riding a creature. We don't really need to say too much about that. But she's also trying to control it. The creature has some variety of collar or bridle upon it, and she's holding onto the reins. So maybe it's a question of controlling passion, or learning to exploit and use your passions during a time when it's right, or indeed using your anger and your resentfulness and bitterness to drive you forward rather than to hold you back. The complexity of the messages of this card could be very deep indeed, but that's just a very brief overview. I mean, it is very compelling. It's also very enigmatic as well. Alright, This one I like as well, the Hanged Man. A man being hung upside down is a method of torture and execution for a traitor in the old days. Tarot coming from the medieval period, it would make a lot of sense that this is actually talking about treachery, and the cross legs make of something vaguely similar to a letter T, which could also stand for a traitor. But there's more to it than that. Once again, we have the serpent imagery around his foot, the foot which is connected to an ankh. The ankh symbol of peace, also a symbol of travel, recognition that life is a journey, and also a sense of recapturing or somehow connecting to a form of wisdom. Maybe it's a knowledge that one needs to look after oneself, and occasionally that means being nasty to somebody else. It's a possibility. So, it is complex. I mean, this is a character who's got nails through his hands, he's got a nail through one of his feet, and the other foot is just hanging from the symbol of travel and peace and a sense of knowledge. Also, beneath his head, there's another serpentine image. So he's got knowledge above him, knowledge beneath him. And it's rather peculiar that the sun symbol at the top is in a bluish yellow, or yeah, it's a bluish greeny colour, really, rather than the colours you would normally associate with something solar. So is it really to do with a solar energy, or is it more of a lunar energy? Is it something which is talking about action or receiving your punishment, or indeed the punishment of the struggle to try and achieve a task? Alright, if you're going through your daily task, going through work, you don't necessarily enjoy it, but you still have to do it. And maybe that's one of the other messages associated with that card there. Okay, death. Card number 13. Very typical skeletal figure carrying a scythe. That's the first thing you would notice when you look at it. But again, there's more to it than that. We've got a scorpion-like creature at his feet, as well as a serpent-like creature as well, whose tail is curling around. Alright. Also, we've got something which looks a bit like souls escaping from bodies as well. So, what can we say about that? The death card is often talking about transformation. A snake sheds its skin. Also transformation. Maybe there's a connection there, but the serpent is also there for wisdom, knowledge, science, art, medicine, creativity. It stands for a lot of things, as well as willpower, as well as something of a very projective, having to achieve things, a goal. So, if the death card is talking about transformation, it's talking about transformation which you are trying to achieve and working very hard to achieve. Often the death card is associated, typically and traditionally, with inner change, with changing your personality, or the way that you are up here and in here. Alright? All of your thoughts, your ideas, your direction, your drive, your emotions, your perspective, who you care for, what you care for, how you deal with society and how you engage with society. That variety of symbolism is not that overtly present here. But from a tarot reading perspective, we could still apply that though. But it's, it's interesting and gloomy, but it's again very difficult to describe and to define the kind of feelings that I get. It's a combination between intrigue and ickiness, a strong desire to experience whatever the death card is trying to tell me, but not to go through pain and suffering on the way. It's peculiar. It really is the way that I react to it anyway. Okay, the next trump of the major arcana, which is 14, called art. This appears, when you first look at it, to be just one figure. But if you look more closely, it's got two heads, one head to the left, one head to the right, of slightly different colours, and that's of course the kind of like transmittive as opposed to receptive kind of message there. And the colours of the two creatures are very typical of that as well. because you've got one which is vaguely bluey, one which is vaguely reddy, and she's also pouring something which looks like fire and something which looks like water into a bowl. A blending of the two, trying to reach a sense of union, communion maybe. Of course, wine is often used in communion in Christianity, but is that purely the message? Some people say that genius is a combination between creativity and intellect. And if she's got fire, which could be regarded as being intellectual, as opposed to water, which could be regarded as being creative, maybe this is talking about the generation of genius. There are Latin words written around it, but I'm not going to go into that because this video is going to be long enough anyway. There's also fire underneath her, the receptacle that she's pouring this stuff into, which is suggesting this is an alchemical operation. Something else you need to think about there. There's something interesting going on there, which is to do with blending or uniting things. It's the devil. Don't be afraid of the devil card, whatever you do, because it's not scary. The thing it's trying to describe seems to be scary, because you've got a whopping great goat figure with a powerful third eye in the middle of its forehead, appearing to be superior to and ruling over humans in various different postures, or humanoid figures in various different postures. The colours associated with it, well, the goat is a greyish black, and there's this reddish pink colour in the background. Red and black, Saturnian, talking about power, control, dominion. You get the feeling that this Saturnian character is not giving the human individuals all that much in the way of freedom. Maybe giving them time to think, maybe. But time to think is not necessarily time for freedom itself. So, although I still see it as a symbol of powerlessness, we've still got the healing signs. We've got the staff with serpents on it. We've also got a winged sun sphere at about the, just beneath the beard of the goat, bringing something divine in. So there is something divine even in suffering, even in powerlessness. There is light actually in the darkness, not light at the end of the tunnel, but actually in the darkness itself. There is something which is either good or useful or beneficial somehow. The lightning struck tower. We've had the death, we've had the devil, and now it's the lightning struck tower. And I'm going to show you why this is not a bad card. Because firstly, we've got a snake symbol coiling around here. And I said the message there within the symbol of the lightning struck tower is that of a serpent basically biting its own tail. In this particular case, we actually have fire coming out of the mouth of the serpent. But it is still reminiscent of the symbol of the Ouroboros, the serpent biting its own tail. The points of the tail and the gaping mouth of the serpent is very similar in meaning to the great rites in the religion of Wicca, for instance. Okay, interesting sexual symbolism. Also talking about continuity, things going in a loop. Time itself being considered to be cyclical. Also speaking of a renewal. Now, the lightning struck tower is sometimes called the house of God. I mean, sure, the imagery is very scary, it's very dark. Again, the red and the black, the signs of powerlessness. Maybe the feeling you'll get when there's a natural disaster happening around you. Sure, there's terror, but there's also something else happening as a result of it. The meaning of the house of God is that of a sense of a bolt from the blue to bring something good, or to destroy something which is bad. So, I suppose there's a message of tragedy being somehow important there, and assisting us in the progress of our lives. Now, we're moving on to the wish card, namely the star as it's called. Very beautiful, very tranquil. Again, we got the same kind of opposites feeling here. We've had one card that was full of a lot of red symbols. Now we're having a card which is full of a lot of blue symbols. So we got something which is an action, and now we got something which is more receptive and contemplative, thinking about things which are better or somehow more useful to you in some manner or other. The energy of the star, or the message of the star, is that of something which is beautiful and positive. Again, we've got diamond symbols at the bottom, maybe talking about transformation, just as I mentioned before, of light being transformed from singular whiteness into the full spectrum, or indeed back again. So yes, there is yet another mention of change. A lot of the tarot cards do actually refer to change, but there's very different types of change within each variety of cards. So what you are like before and what you're like after is always going to be very different in accordance with the meanings of tarot itself. So this is wistful, this is romantic, this is sensitive, this is contemplative, and this is also transformative, getting something you've always wanted in a positive way, or being able to contemplate about the future in a much more realistic and positive manner. Some people say that if you use your creativity well, you can use that to overcome problems. And there is a problem-solving message associated with the star card. But that kind of message carries on with the moon. And this is where we get a bit of a change of perspective. I mean, okay, we have two receptive cards with strong accents on the blue, and then we move on to something more positive and more energetic with the sun card afterwards. But with the moon card, this is often associated with some of the dreamlike states as mentioned in the star card, but there's something else added to it, something of the romantic, some people say, but within this card there's no actual objectively romantic signs associated with it. Apart from, of course, what could be seen as being a moon in the distance, it doesn't look very moon-like. And in fact, we've actually got a scarab beetle carrying what looks like it could be the sun disk, as if maybe the sun has now set and it's now on the other side of the world and the moon has now come up. So it's talking about the sun is on the other side, we've now got the moon above. The moon speaks of dreams and the world of dreams, but that particular expression of the moon card is not necessarily all that strong in terms of meaning. We've seen quite a lot of other meanings in the other cards, some of which are more overt. But this one is a little more moving towards the traditional symbolism of tarot, because there's often something similar to the astrological sign of Cancer at the bottom of many of the other moon cards, as well as a sense of there being two possibly threatening creatures. We don't have threatening creatures either side here. We've got two Egyptian deities who don't seem to be striking scary poses. They're just there, maybe guardians of another realm or world. The sun card, joy. Quite simply, joy. We've got two fairy-like creatures dancing. One appears to be possibly male, the other one possibly female. Their wings are of different colours. One is yellow and one is red, and yellow and red are the two main colours coming out of the sun. And they're dancing with their arms outstretched, basking in basically beautiful sunshine, and with grass around them, underneath them. From a more pagan perspective, maybe even representing the joy of realizing how important the sun is. If you think about the journey so far, a lot of the earlier cards are to do with the development of either an individual or society, as well as science and wisdom and institutions taking over the control of people's lives. And then it becomes a little more in-depth, talking about the tragedy and possibly even treachery in some people's lives, a sense of desire and trying to go for your own goals, and then thinking about, a transformation that is present in the death card, and also the card labelled art. So the accent of the story which is being portrayed in the major arcana is changing a lot, and all of a sudden we have the sun, we have the moon, we have the star, okay, coming in basically rapid succession, not in that order, but in rapid succession. So it would appear that this could even be talking about humans being able to think about something above and beyond the basic needs that they've had. It could be an expression of the intellectual development of an individual or society. It could easily be an expression of the way that humans perceive themselves. Understanding the importance of the sun, understanding the importance of the position of the moon, understanding the way that one's mind can even be affected by the external stimuli of the sun, the moon, day and night in a much more real way. So the major arcana is interesting and intriguing. Now, the final two cards we've got here do seem to be carrying on along that same theme of greater intellectual or creative understanding or involvement. Because you've got, the final one is the universe, number 21 is the universe. Starts with number 0, goes on to number 21. Alright, so still 22 major arcana cards. So you've had the star, the sun, the moon, and now the universe, which shows an even greater level of ability to understand abstract in a very abstract manner. You could say that the Fool card starts off very self-obsessed, wrapped up in himself and not being able to see things which are around him. But finally, we're looking at signs of the era, called the Eon, and the universe, namely how big the entire world is and how many more things we've got to know. Rather like the Devil card, the universe card is sometimes described with Saturnian messages, which is to do with the teacher or being taught. And if that's the case, what are you being taught about if you move through the progression of understanding about the sun, stars, the moon, and now you're moving on to the universe? You're seeing how much bigger the world is. Maybe it's talking about developing an abstract and even an objective look at life from the outside. Again, we return to, in the universe card, some of the traditional tarot symbols. We got 4 creatures surrounding the individual in a circle, but the individual is surrounded by a shape similar to an eye. The eye having connection to the eye of Horus. It has connection to the solar disk that the scarab was carrying in the moon. It has connection to, well, the circle has connection to the circle defined by the tail of the serpent in the lightning-struck tower. Of course, the Saturnian imagery we've already seen in the Devil card. So there's a blend of meanings of the latter stages of the major arcana, which is coming through in the universe card itself. So it is a story. It's a story about the growth of understanding. It's a story about the growth of a society. It's a story about the growth of people. And it's all being portrayed basically in pictures. And it starts off very basic. And then it gets so much more complex and so much more abstract with the passage of time until it becomes a fantastic expression of a revelation about how large life really is. If we take into account the 20th, which is the Eon or the era, I feel that that one is also fascinating. The symbology there is a little more simple. We've got a thoth-like character in the middle, which is surrounded by an almost spectral character, which appears to be an extended body of the individual. But there's also signs here relating to, well, we got the wings disc. We got the disc at the bottom there. We got wings coming out of it. Wings at the feet again is a reference way back to what we had with the Magician card. So it's another stage of initiation. It's another moment when you feel you're about to go out into the outside world, and that comes before you finally are there out in the universe. This is, well, later in life. So, I mean, this video has gone on long enough already. I mean, I could try and delve even deeper into the major arcana of the Book of Thoth Tarot, but I'm not going to do that right now because I've bored you senseless for a long time now, and you've got many more important things to do. What I would say is I hope you enjoyed this little journey. It's it was good for me as well, because it's reminded me of some of the things I used to know, some of the things I used to learn. It's always good for myself to go over the little pocket art gallery, which is the tarot, and see what kind of other things appear there. So thank you very much for watching. Don't forget to subscribe if you haven't already, because there's going to be many more cool things on this channel with the passage of time, and I look forward to speaking to you again soon sometime. Just put the tarot back into its box for another night.